Good evening. Welcome to another program of the International Grapevine. This is your host, Wallingford Lee. Tonight in the International Grapevine, I want to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about the judicial system. This is going to be part two since we did part one. We feel very blessed to have two special guests with us, two very special guests. I'm talking about Mr. Nestor Diaz, who happens to be an attorney, not only in criminal, but also in immigration. He's been around for a long time, helping in the community in so many different ways. And we're pleased today and happy to have another special guest. We're talking about Miss Michelle Johnson, who's also running or a candidate to be a judge. Michelle comes with a very interesting background. She have over 11 years as a prosecutor, 3 years as a civil rights attorney, 7 years as a criminal defense attorney, 4 years as a criminal court judge, and 5 years as a supervising judge of Queens County Criminal Court. Again, I don't have words to thank both guests coming on board and to have the opportunity for our community to educate their mind. And now that we're into an election process, to have the opportunity to vote for these two wonderful people and hard workers who have worked hard in the court system in more than one way. Both of you, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Wallingford. It's always a pleasure to be part of the show. You do such great work as a community activist, and it's always an honor and a privilege to be part of this program.
Thank you. The happiness of mine is you, because honestly, Nestor, you have done a wonderful job. You have helped a lot of people in the community. I mean, a lot of them that you have no idea, people that I've known for a while, that you have represented them in court with an excellent record. And I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. And for that, I'm thankful and honored to have the opportunity to work with you once again. I really do. And now for me, it's a new with Ms. Johnson. So I'm sure I'll have the opportunity to work with both of you all again.
I'm looking forward to it. And thank you for the opportunity to appear on your program. I'm very, very, very impressed. And also the opportunity to meet your following audience and just to get to know a little bit about you and a little bit about me.
Definitely. Well, let's start a little bit. Let's talk about both of you. You both are candidates to be a judge. Let's start with you, Ms. Johnson. How does it feel to be a candidate in this circumstance?
Well, I am a sitting judge currently.
Judge right now.
Have been for the last 9 years. And so what's different now is that I'm seeking election to the Supreme Court, which is the trial court, the highest trial court for the state of New York. And it feels wonderful to be a candidate. It will feel greater to win the candidacy. But I'm hoping to continue my career as a judge doing what I've been doing for 9 years, which is making sure that anyone who comes before me accused of a crime has a fair opportunity to present their defense and are given the due process that all are due before anyone's liberty can be taken away.
I like that. Good, solid answer with responsibility and fairness. That's good. How about you, Mr. Diaz? How does it feel to be considered a candidate to be a judge?
Well, yes, I am a civil court candidate. That's the lower court. The civil court is the court of lower jurisdiction. It handles lawsuits of a maximum of $25,000 and anything else below that. And then everything below Supreme Court where Judge Johnson is going. Before we move forward, I just want the audience to know I am not running against Michelle. Michelle Johnson is not running against her. We're both friends. I have a lot of respect from Judge Johnson, and you could vote for both of us. So it's up to you. So a lot of people are confused because they're used to debates and people against each other. That's not the case here. So one of the purpose of your program is to educate the public.
Exactly.
That's what we're doing here. Judge Johnson, I've had the pleasure of going before Judge Johnson many times. And when I think about it, one way to describe it is, you know, when you're in the Olympics and you see an ice skater skating and it makes it look easy, and I see her up on the bench and it makes it look easy because she's a judge and she's fair, and then she's also a supervisor and it makes it look easy, but it's not that easy. So that's how you could tell how good the person is, because they make it look easy, but it's not. It's, you get all sorts of characters. In the criminal court, you deal with a lot of difficult situations. You're talking about the liberty, one of the most precious rights an individual has, losing even a day. They're talking about days, weeks, months, year, and you have to decide these people. So it's not an easy responsibility. And she's been involved, and I've been involved in a different capacity for years. So the fact that, the Michelle Johnson has been a prosecutor and a civil rights attorney, if I'm mistaken, and then she was a judge in several boards. I'm sure she could speak for herself, and now is supervising. I've been a prosecutor. I was a district attorney in Brooklyn. I was in domestic violence and civil rights, elder abuse as well. And then I left in 2000, and then basically I've been doing criminal defense, immigration, family law, civil rights. I practiced in basically every single court in Queens, family court, civil court, housing, Supreme Court, everything, every place I've been at. So I'm ready. So I'm very excited. And again, I've had the, I'm inspired by people like Judge Johnson, and I'm excited for the opportunity to judge everyone that comes before me in a fair and equal way.
That's the bottom line. That's obviously the bottom line: fairness and honesty. Very, very, very difficult thing sometimes. What is the process to become a judge, Mr. Diaz?
Well, that's in my there's a few ways. One is the electoral process, and that's what Judge Johnson and I are going through right now. It's the democratic way. The people of Queens now are deciding right now. Early voting. This is the first time in the history of the city that early voting has started for a presidential election. The early voting started last year for local races, but this is the first time it involved a presidential election. So you hear all sorts of reports. I think as of Sunday, I heard about 200,000 people in the city have voted. So a lot of people are energized and excited. So we're going through the electoral process. I was nominated by the Democratic Party, the Queens Democratic Party, and I'm inspired and embraced their division of diversity, because the current chair of the Democratic Party is Gregory Meeks, and he has a vision of creating diversity in the judicial system. Like, for example, the civil rights judges, we have Jessica Gargan, and then we have, I think she's Italian Irish, and then you have an Asian, Lee Chang. You have myself, Nestor Diaz. I'm actually making history as the first male Dominican in the history of Queens to ever be certainly on the ballot, and God willing will be elected. And we have Denise Johnson. This is the year of the Johnsons. We have Denise Johnson, who's civil court, and Michelle Johnson, Supreme Court. So there you go. So she's African American. So it's very interesting, and I like this because the Queens is the most diverse county in the world. We have several.
It is a United Nation.
Yes, but I think I got off the question you asked me, the ways to become a judge. So that's one way, through the electoral process. Another way is you could be appointed by the mayor. Okay. You can file an application, and the mayor has a committee. It's called the Mayor's Judicial Committee, which appoints judges. And I believe Judge Johnson got selected in that way.
No, that's correct. Back in 2011, I was appointed initially by Mayor Bloomberg, and the process is just as you described it. You submit an application, and you're screened and vetted by their Judiciary Committee, and then they determine whether or not to make the appointment, but appointments by the mayor are only for the lower interim civil court.
So there is a review process when it goes to the mayor before he makes a decision, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. You are vetted by the mayoral judicial committee, as well as the Queens County Bar Association, which has a judicial screening committee. You're also investigated thoroughly by the New York City Department of Investigation. And once you are vetted thoroughly and screened thoroughly, then you're either recommended or not recommended to the mayor for appointment.
Ms. Johnson, what would you consider the type of pressure that comes from being a judge?
You know, I think it's hard for a lot of people. The hardest thing about being a judge is this expectation that you know all of the law and all of the procedural laws, and you know, as you sit there in this robe on the bench, everyone presumes that you know what the right answer is. And I think for judges coming on, especially new judges, my advice has always been and continues to be comfortable being wrong, because it's more important that you fix it when you're wrong than that you know, stand your ground. So you don't know it all. You still have to look it up. And it's okay to be human, even as a judge. So I think that's where most people find discomfort, but it's my comfort zone because it causes you to be extra careful when making decisions that affect people's lives in the way that it does in the criminal court.
Very interesting answer, which brings me to another part. Otherwise than just been bedded down by the law and the book says this, does a judge use common sense in certain cases sometimes?
Well, you hope so. And you hope that a person's ability to be reasonable and utilize common sense is a significant part of the vetting process through the committees. They ask you about these things, about, you know, how you've handled different situations. And even more than that, they conduct serious investigations into your relations with everyone you've come in contact with during your career, so that they can get a sense of how you've handled, how you've exercised and implemented common sense in different scenarios throughout your life.
Mr. Diaz, can you tell our viewing audience just exactly what is a criminal case, sir?
Well, a criminal case involves a violation of the penal code, by and large. It's different from a civil case. A civil matter is one person, like I want to sue you, a private matter. I'm suing Wallingford Lee for a wrong that you made to me. Now, criminal cases, there's a penal code. Let's make an easy situation. Some person steals property, okay? Now I violated a penal code. Let's say going to a store and stealing some groceries, okay? Under the law, it's petty larceny, okay? Now, the police arrest the suspect, okay? The alleged person who made the robbery. Mm-hmm. Then the person who carries the case in the courtroom is a district attorney. Like you see Law and Order, you know, law, sure. The police make the arrest, and then they get the case is brought to the district attorney, who brings the case against the suspect, the defendant, on behalf of the people of the state of New York. So when if you're in the courtroom and you see on one side, you see the defendant, the alleged suspect, the person who's arrested, and next to him is his attorney, the defense attorney. On the other side, you see the district attorney. And when each of them, and you see Michelle Johnson, like the criminal court judge, who's the neutral person, and make a decision on between both persons. And then when the district attorney makes an announcement, when you go on the record, everything's on the record, everything's being typed, and they make an announcement. They say, so-and-so appear on behalf of the people of the state of New York, because the district attorney is represent the people of the state of New York. You broke the alleged law of the penal code. So they're on behalf of the people of the state of New York. It's not a civil matter. They're on behalf of the people of the state of New York. Whereas the criminal defense attorney is there on behalf of the defendant, the suspect. And that's the difference. It's not a civil matter where you could decide whether to drop the case or not. The district attorney has a responsibility acting on behalf the whole people. It's quite a responsibility. At least Judge Johnson and myself, we've been on both sides of the aisle. I've been, fortunately, a district attorney, which I think was very good, good experience. And then I've been a criminal defense attorney. All in all, I've been an attorney for 30 years.
Right.
And one thing important, especially here in Queens, I've been, like I said, I've been both sides of the aisle. So I think it gives me a different perspective to look at things in different ways. And I think that's good, will make me, help make you a better judge, I believe. Also, I think one of the good characteristics of being a judge is to empathize. You mentioned common sense, also to empathize, to help feel what these people going through before you, because they want to feel because you heard Judge Johnson myself mention to be fair and equal, because the people that go before you want to feel that, am I getting a fair treatment? Are these people going to railroad me? Everyone wants to at least be treated fairly. So at least someone who's dealt with immigration here since I left the district attorney's office since 2001, and over in Queens, that's 51% of the people that weren't even born here. We have a large immigration population. So I think they'll see that I could empathize. I could empathize with a lot of what the immigrant population are going through. That doesn't mean that I'll throw away the store, but at least I could understand their background, dealing with where they're coming from. And as an attorney, I pride myself in trying to explain the law. I tell them a lot of things that they don't want to hear, but I always pride myself in being honest. And I take great pains to explain to them, this is what's going to happen, this is what the situation is, and at least I'll go there with at least educated and understanding what's going to happen, even though they don't want to like it. That's a lot of a judge. You want to be fair and equal, make sure they at least understand what's going to happen.
It's important, obviously. Here's a good question for you, Mrs. Johnson. What is the distinction between type of crimes? I'm talking about a felony, misdemeanor, and infraction. If you could take a few minutes and kind of break them down, interpretation for our audience, while I know what they are and what it means, but I think from an educational standpoint of view, it's imperative that they understand, especially youngsters out there in the streets.
Sure, absolutely. And so the different levels of crimes basically dictate your exposure, how much exposure you have to jail time. And this leads from no jail time at all to up to the much more serious cases where you can do up to life in jail. And so infractions are usually those petty offenses that lower than petty offenses, actually, that don't require any jail time, usually a fine according to the sentencing statute, or up to 15 days in jail. That's the maximum that you could be sentenced to on an infraction. And those are for crimes like driving while impaired by alcohol, for instance, as opposed to driving while intoxicated. One is an infraction and one is an unclassified misdemeanor. And so infractions, the maximum you could do is 15 days in jail as a sentence. For misdemeanors, if it's a B, there are two levels of misdemeanors, A's and B's. B misdemeanors, the maximum time that you're facing in jail is up to 30 days. And so that goes anywhere from no jail time whatsoever, and all of the other sentencing options apply at every level except infractions. For instance, you can be sentenced to probation, you can be sentenced to a conditional discharge, which doesn't require probation or jail, just requires that you stay out of trouble for some designated period of time, and that would be the sentence. And then you have A misdemeanors where the sentence exposure goes from 0 to up to 1 year in jail, or just under 1 year in jail, 364 days now. So those are your misdemeanor level crimes. And then as the crimes become more serious, you move into felony land. And felony levels go from E felonies all the way to A1, A2 felonies. And the sentencing structure graduates the higher felony you go. So the E felony is the lowest level felony, and you can, depending upon the felony, serve anywhere up to 3 years, 4 years, 5 years in jail. And then it goes all the way up to the A2, A1, and those are your murder charges, your very serious drug cases that you could end up doing life in jail. There's no
Wow.
longer death penalty in New York.
Good breakdown. Good breakdown. We'll be right back on the International Grapevine as we continue talking about all these different cases that comes up in the judges' chambers and the issues involved with them. We'll be right back on the International Grapevine.
Some people are always in a hurry. They run when they could walk, race up steps when others take it slow. When Joe Biden's president, America is just going to have to keep up. We won't have to wait to deal with COVID-19. He's already got a plan. Won't have to wait for a president on the side of working families. He's from Scranton. No one has to tell him Wall Street didn't build this country. He knows who did. We're a nation that's been hit hard by this virus. But Joe Biden knows when you get knocked down, you get up off the mat. No one needs to tell Joe how hard life can hit you. Losing a wife, a daughter, a son. But he knows it's in the pain you can find purpose. To lead America, you need to understand America.
America's an idea stronger than any army, more powerful than any dictator or tyrant. It gives hope to the most desperate people on earth.
And it's an idea as alive and powerful today as it was when it was first proposed.
The most powerful idea in the history of the world, I think, beats in the heart of the people of this country. No matter your race, your ethnicity, no matter your gender identity, your sexual orientation, no matter your faith, it unites America. Whether your ancestors were natives to these shores, whether they were brought here forcibly and enslaved, whether they're immigrants from generations back, or those coming today looking to build a better life for their families.
Our best days are not behind us. They're ahead.
In times as challenging as these, I believe there's only one way forward. As a united America, united in our dreams of a better future for us and for our children. This is our moment, this is our mission, and we'll do it together. I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
And we're back here in the International Grapevine talking about the early election for one thing and the pros and cons of it on the last day of election, which is November 3rd. But I'm going to get my special guest to break it down, Mr. Diaz, to talk a little bit about the election. And we have both candidates on board here with us. Mr. Diaz, can you explain to us about the early termination and the days left for finally voting?
Gladly. So early voting started in New York City October 24th on Saturday. It continues all the way up until November 1st. It stops November 2nd. There's no election. And then November 3rd. So traditional election day. November 3rd is the final election. Okay. So again, October 24th today. I don't know when your show is going to air, but right now, today's October 27th.
We'll be out this Friday. We'll be out Thursday.
Okay. So it'll be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, not Monday, and then Tuesday. So that gives an opportunity to everybody. If you have to work on Tuesday, you say, oh my God, now I have to get a babysitter or something like that. No. So then if it's easier on the weekend, then you can go Saturday or Sunday. And I think Judge Johnson was saying that there's a website that you can help find your poll site, because a lot of people make the mistake. I said, oh, I know where to go. I go where I always go. No, there's less places for to go vote. Is that right, Judge Johnson?
Right. So the early voting locations are different than the voting location that you'd be scheduled to vote at based on your address on election day. And so it's very important that you look up where your early voting location is if you're going to go by November 1st. And then, of course, where you go on November 3rd, if you decide to wait until election day, then you'll have to go to that location. But it could be.
But you also mentioned a website.
Yes, I believe it was Vote NYC.
Yeah, it's Vote NYC. And I think there's Find My Poll site.
And Find
My Poll, POLL site, SITE site. But you can also go BOTENYC. We're talking about New York City.
Right.
So, and again, Judge Johnson and I work running in Queens County, all of Queens County, anywhere from East Astoria to Rockaways to LaGuardia, Kennedy, every part of all the four corners of Queens County. Okay, you have the opportunity to vote for both of us, if you so wish.
As both of my special guests has made it clear, there it is. They are not running against one another, so you have a great opportunity to vote for both of them. And it's a thrill. It's an opportunity as a citizen that you have. Instead of complaining and whining, vote. Your vote is extremely important, and you have a right as a citizen to exercise that right. It's very important that you understand that. It's part of your rights. Getting back to what we were talking a little bit.
Mr. Leaf, if I may say
Sure.
something, because people are talking about the election, the president, the congressman, this is all very important, but something about people that don't know about how impactful, what an impact these judges have. The term of office for a civil court judge is 10 years. 10 years. I could be there as long as 10 years. A Supreme Court judge is 14 years. Okay, think about that. These assembly people, state senators, running for election every 2 years. These people are there and have an impact on several generations worth. Okay, think about that. That's very important. So and that's why we get a lot of scrutiny. I had to do the Judge Johnson talked about all the commission and from the mayor's office to get vetted. I had to go through the New York City Bar and the Queens County Bar Association and LGBT Bar. That I had to do an application. It came out to 89 pages with writing samples. Wow. They check you all out. All the attorneys and judges you go before. I think they even called Judge Johnson about me. So they do a lot of checking out because it's a big responsibility. There's
a very serious one at that.
Yeah, so we're going to be there for a long time, God willing. So this is a very big responsibility, and I apologize for interrupting, but I think it's something important for the audience to know.
Information that you just gave is not only important, it's crucial for the viewing audience to understand the positions of each judge and the term limit is extremely important. And it has an impact on all of our lives one way or the other. Maybe not directly, but our kids that are coming behind, nieces, nephews. So it's important to know these things. And again, as I mentioned, your vote is your right. And as a good citizen, instead of whining and complaining, go out there and vote. Now's the time to get your vote and exercise it. It's extremely important.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because in a little bit, we talk a little bit, Mr. Diaz, your experience go way back. How important it is on a criminal case to choose a good lawyer, and what is the expectation of that lawyer in a criminal case?
Well, I think the key word is good. It depends on what kind of case it is.
Let's say if it's a criminal case.
It's a criminal case, but you could have a civil case. You could have a landlord-tenant case. It's like different doctors.
Right.
You could have a doctor, a podiatrist, a guy who's good with the foot is not good for your brain, a neurologist. So the same thing with the lawyer. Does this lawyer is specialized and experienced in this problem? Okay. So obviously, I mentioned earlier, your liberty's at stake in a criminal court. Something that's the most precious right that we have. That's why they make the standard of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. They make it the highest standard of law because it's our most cherished right, the right of your freedom, of your liberty. Okay, so you want to get the best attorney you can find. Well, you should look for an attorney. When you're looking for an attorney, get one that's the most experienced, certainly one, perhaps one in your field. So now these days you have websites and you can Google information, search engines, and you could look it up if you could afford it. Now the Constitution guarantees if you we talked about off the air of Miranda. One of the Miranda warnings is if you get arrested, one of the officers required to tell you you have a right to remain silent, and also one of the things is if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. So under a constitution, because our founding fathers recognized, how serious it is to lose your liberty, that they provided that an attorney will be provided for you if you couldn't afford it. Okay, so. And if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. So that's
But when you talk about attorneys, and I'm happy we're talking about this, and this goes to the answer for both of you. You first, Mr. Diaz, and then Mrs. Johnson. How important it is to pick a good attorney? Are you doing it on reputation, or you just going through the internet to see how good he is, or you call a friend and stuff like that? Because just like a mechanic, you have good mechanics and you have bad mechanics. You have mediocre attorneys, just like have mediocre doctors. So what is the proper way in a situation like that? Because sometimes your life are in danger before you go to court. So you want to make sure you have a bulldog in your car.
You want, well, these days, like when you go to a restaurant, you look at reviews and everything else, right? Now you have online reviews. You can see a lot of people there's like all sorts of search engines like avvo.com is one search, or Google, Yelp, even YouTube, and I'm on all these sites. And then people that I've represented in the past put a little review.
Recommend.
And then they put down their experience. I like this attorney. He actually answered all my questions. He spent all my time. He showed up. I hear, because practicing attorney, I hear a lot of stories. People come to my office and they say, this attorney didn't explain anything. He said, or she said, I got this. Don't worry about it. And I think that's a sign of disrespect, because you talk about someone's liberty. So I take, and a lot of times these people aren't very sharp, but they're very simple. I take great pains to try to explain to them, no, this is what's going on. And so it's very important to explain these things to them. So a lot of times they want someone to explain things to them, because then a lot of attorneys think they're like a Supreme Court justice, and they think you're above it all. They don't explain things to them. So I think it's very important. So I think a lot of people appreciate someone that is not going to talk down to them and tries to explain things to them. So you have to find, what is it you're looking for? Do you want someone that's going to take the time, is going to make all the appearances, or just not even show up in court? So these are a lot of things. What's important to you? Do you want the bulldog? Do you want the person who's reliable, that's always going to be in court? These are all things that show up in the reviews and you look for. Okay. So it's like when you go to a restaurant, who has a good service, who's got the best meal, so on and so forth.
And if I could just add to that, Mr. Lee,
Please
I would just say everything Mr. Diaz said about communication is key, but it's not just talking to the person. At the person. You have to be able to explain in layman, non-attorney terms what you're trying to explain, or else it's almost as if you're not talking at all. So this is very important. You're looking for someone who's good at communicating in a way that you can understand what they're saying, the legal terms in layman's terms. And then I would also say that it's okay to ask an attorney for references. When I was a practicing attorney for many years, almost 30 years, and I always told a client, if you're happy with my representation of you, feel free to refer me. And I got a number of referrals, because I think that's the best way to gauge whether or not you have someone who is going to be responsive to your needs. And then finally, I would add that there's this perception that the more you pay for an attorney, the better that attorney is. And that is so far from the truth that I think the world should know it, because the truth is that a number of the people that come before me in court are not economically advantaged and can't afford an attorney. And so even when you're using a public defender, let's say, someone from Legal Aid or Queens Defenders or Brooklyn Defenders or Neighborhood Defenders, there are a number of these agencies that provide attorneys at no cost. You want to talk to those attorneys just as you would someone that you were going to hire to determine what their experience is. It's not enough if they handle criminal cases or whatever their specialty is. Do they have litigation experience? Do they have writing experience? It's important that you can try a case, not just that you can prepare for the trial. So there are so many things that you want to investigate about a person, but I think what's most important is to ask for references. Tell me a couple of people that you've represented in the past that I can talk to about your representation.
That's a great answer. Let's go back to another part of it. As a judge, how important it is to you dealing with an attorney that is well prepared versus an attorney that is not very well prepared and is bungling the papers all over the place?
It's crucial. But as a judge, for instance, Mr. Diaz represented, he came before me and he has come before me a number of times, and I'm quite impressed with him. And so when you're a judge and you see an attorney who is an advocate for their client and who has case law and who is prepared to make arguments that make sense based on the current status of the law, then you can relax as a judge somewhat. You know this person's rights are being honored and taken care of. When you see, at least I do, when I see an attorney who I don't think is well versed, as a judge, you're not allowed, you're not permitted to tell the person before you, perhaps you should get another attorney. That's unethical. But what you do is you start to, and you can't represent them, but you start to ask questions publicly, so that if they catch it, they catch it, or if not, but the questions infer that you're looking for information that an attorney is not able to provide you. And that's a problem.
Under what case, Ms. Johnson, does a judge say to both attorney, let's stop for a second and meet me in my chambers? What forced a judge to make a decision like that? As an example, you don't have to give me a name.
I mean, that's happened to me, and there could be a number of reasons to do that. But I can tell you, I've sometimes, if there's a question about an attorney's eligibility, and by eligibility, I mean whether or not they remain in good standing with the law department that they're admitted to practice law in. If there's a question about that, then I'll pull the parties in to ask about that, whether or not they remain in good standing. And there are sites that you can go to look that information up to determine whether or not an attorney's registration is still active or it's expired in a given state. And so something like that would cause you to come up. And then there are other reasons like it could be a medical reason that you don't want to put on the record for the entire courtroom to hear for privacy reasons, whether it be privacy of the attorney or of the client. That you'll have a bench conference. Basically, the whole reason is to ensure that whatever information is being discussed is not divulged to the entire public until a court has deemed it appropriate to do so.
Mr. Diaz, a couple of times I've seen on TV, I don't have too much experience with court. They will say to one of the clients, the judge is a hard case. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? That the judge is a hard case in a case like that?
Well, you have, what I think you mean is someone that's old by the book. Oh, and again, it's hard to say because the judge, you asked before about compassion, and you're human beings. So a hard case. One question they asked me is, I think because I had to go through the board, I'm trying to think it was the right question. They asked me, what kind of a judge are you going to be? Are you going to be what is it? A hard judge, just like like maybe some people say a judge could be just a prosecutor's judge. Like he leans all the way to the prosecutor. Okay. And he says, he basically looks at the facts and basically whatever the prosecutor, for instance, I'm using an example. Whatever the prosecutor says, the district attorney says, I want to give this person 7 years. It says, okay, 7 years. They don't even look at the facts. So a lot of judges have a lot of discretion. Let's say for want of better, they have 3 to 7 years. And you weigh a lot of things because it's very important. The judge has a lot of experience. Like we mentioned, the qualification. Look at Judge Johnson. I think she has over 30 years of experience, more. And then, so you use all that experience as a lawyer and as a judge. And then you bring that and weigh a case. Because you look at how many times has this person been arrested? How many times has this been convicted? What's the strength of the case? What's the evidence? Is there any redeeming qualities? Is there any mitigating factors? And you weigh all that in giving him anywhere from 3 to 7 years. So there's a humane approach, and that's not easy, but that's the fair thing. That's where you use your knowledge and experience as a judge, as opposed to I'm going to do whatever these guys want. The district attorney, I'm going to say 7 years. Oh, then you could be the other way, a very liberal judge. Now I'm going to give it the minimum all the time. No, that's not the right way. It's always the harder way is the best approach to weigh everything fairly. See, we mentioned several times fair and equal. It's not that easy, okay? But that's the hardest road. But that's what you always strive to, the balance. What's the fairest approach? So I think that I try to answer your question.
I think you did. Deviating a little bit, Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
If the police department enter a suspect home without a warrant, do they have the right to do that, or do they have to have a warrant before they enter someone's home?
So I am actually not permitted as a sitting judge to discuss those types of issues because these types of issues come before me all the time, and I have to at least avoid any appearance of bias. And I'm not biased in truth, but I will say this. If you are going to search any area that the law deems the private area of an individual, whether that be a home or a car or any area where a person has a privacy interest, could even be a cell phone, then under most circumstances, a warrant is required unless there are exceptions which are permitted in the law. So that's as much as I can probably say about that.
Can you talk a little bit about the Miranda Rights?
Sure. Well, only to the extent that there's this perception in the public, and I think it comes from television, that every single time a person is arrested, that somehow their rights are violated unless a police officer has read them or advised them of their Miranda rights. And the truth of the law is that you're only required by law to advise a person arrested of their rights pursuant to Miranda, and that is their right to remain silent, their right to have an attorney present, that one will be provided for them. They're only required to advise you if in fact they intend to question you about the incident. And if they don't advise you of your Miranda rights and proceed to question a suspect about an incident, someone who's in custody, then that evidence is subject to suppression later on at a hearing. But if there is no intent to question a suspect or someone arrested, there's no legal requirement that they be advised of their Miranda rights.
Mr. Diaz, if a suspect has been arrested, does he have the right to question a police officer that has arrested him on the premises?
Does he have the right? And again, I'm not allowed to go into into all sorts of, because they basically beat it into me. I can't even talk about certain things. I can't even give opinions. The police have to follow the law. And one thing you shouldn't do as a common sense thing, don't get into an argument with the police. Comply, and then if they did anything wrong, you bring it up to your attorney. And then it's up to your attorney to see if there's anything that they could suppress or not. The judge mentioned any suppression hearing. It's not the best thing to get into an argument with the police. This is from a common sense standpoint. Just like I don't get into an argument with someone who has a handgun right there or something like that. People, there's a lot of tempers that flare. So if someone's doing something you think is wrong, you bring it up to your attorney, and then they'll bring it up if it's appropriate, and try to suppress things that may be done improperly. That's all I can say on the matter.
Well, understood. I want to take this opportunity in behalf of the family of the Grapevine to thank both of you for giving me the opportunity to interview you. It was very interesting, and I've learned a lot, and I think my audience have. At the same time, I want to say that I wish both of you all success in the upcoming election. I think both of you are deserving. And as such, thank you so much for being on the International Grapevine tonight.
Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. I think you continue to do good work and getting information to the public. And it's very important. I think, just like we always say, it's important to have informed decisions. And when people, make it's important to go vote and make an informed vote, just like make an informed decision. So programs like this, educating the public, I think is very good. You're doing a great service to the community. So thank you.
Absolutely.
I thank both of you. And again, most of all, I not only answering the questions, seeing the honesty in your voices and eyes. Thank you so much for being a special guest tonight on the Family Grapevine. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And again, this is Wallingford Lee saying good night for the International Grapevine and hoping that you have had the opportunity to enjoy this show and learn a lot. Again, we hope to see you next week at the same time in the same place. Good night.